The rise and fall of the tech industry is best exemplified by the story of BlackBerry. Disruptive technology creates and absorbs billion-dollar businesses because it changes the market environment so swiftly and dramatically. In a few short years, BlackBerry's share of the worldwide mobile market dropped from approximately 20% to almost zero. The history of BlackBerry starts in Canada in the 1980s. Research in Motion, or RIM for short, was the firm that gave birth to BlackBerry in Canada in 1984. Research in Motion was founded by two engineering students, Mike Lazaridis and Douglas Fregan. The company's initial focus was on wireless communications network technologies. The first two-way messaging pager was introduced by Research in Motion in 1996, and the business went public on the Toronto Stock Exchange in 1997. Another pager, with a full QWERTY keyboard, was among the first products that carried the BlackBerry name and eventually became a symbol of the company. Actually, the form and texture of the keyboard's keys inspired the brand name BlackBerry. The primary advantage of this pager was its ability to integrate with email, which provided business users and executive sales representatives with the first convenient mobile access to email. This was a big event, and BlackBerry would find its market. The following model would include telephone functionality, which at the time had never actually been done properly. Throughout the 1990s, IBM, Palm, and Ericsson were all involved in the competition to rule the newly emerging handheld market. Apple even attempted with the Apple Newton and stylus, but the latter failed miserably due to subpar software. BlackBerry approached this market with a very different perspective. They intended to be unique. It wasn't until the 1990s that the big players realized that bandwidth for data transmission was extremely limited. Research in Motion's creator, Mike, was aware of this restriction. He had developed a tool inside the BlackBerry smartphones that distributed the data transfers in a way that avoided overloading the networks. BlackBerry devices therefore simply worked, but others were demanding ridiculous amounts of money for products that hardly worked over a network. This gave BlackBerry a distinct advantage, especially when paired with a thumb-friendly keyboard. BlackBerry's success was also attributed to its guerrilla marketing strategy. Employees of BlackBerry would frequently observe business people using bulky computers during conferences. These individuals would receive a complimentary month-long trial of a BlackBerry device from the BlackBerry staff. BlackBerries quickly became standard and dominated the corporate sector through extensive word-of-mouth marketing generated by business customers switching from laptops to BlackBerries. The gadget was simply far more useful than other phones available at the time. In order to cater to non-business consumers, BlackBerry added extra features for average users to keep them interested. The BlackBerry Pearl was their first entry into this new market. It included a new service called Blackberry Messenger and multimedia features, including a camera. During the mid-2000s, service providers used to charge a fee for each text message, which was the predominant messaging format at the time. However, Blackberry Messenger used internet data, much like the current iPhone iMessage feature, to send short and inexpensive messages. It was nothing less than revolutionary back then. People were able to opt out of their text message-only plans thanks to it. Due to this breakthrough, BlackBerry quickly gained widespread popularity and became everywhere. The business held 50% of the US smartphone market and 20% of the worldwide smartphone market at its height. It was a Goliath in the tech industry. Users varied in age, from professionals to hobbyists. The business held a very strong position in the industry. How then did everything go so wrong? It was 2007. Windows Vista had just been released, the first Transformers movie had come out, and George W. Bush was the president. At Macworld, Steve Jobs took the stage to discuss a new product that the company was developing. It was a single device that served as a phone, email client, web browser, and mini-computer. As Steve Jobs was making his presentation, Mike Lazaridis, the creator of BlackBerry, was in Canada and declared, "This is an impossibility. The networks wouldn't be able to carry this. It's illogical that anyone would even propose this." Mike was, in fact, correct. The iPhone failed to function properly, prompting Apple to face lawsuits. However, after the initial challenges, Mike was proven to be mistaken when the iPhone started to function. The iPhone had become a global phenomenon in those 2 years. Its multi-touch, dynamic, capacitive touchscreen captivated both users and developers. BlackBerry had followers by the time they recognized this posed a major danger. HTC and other Android phones began to appear on the market, breaking down restrictions and boosting competitiveness. This was new for BlackBerry, as they previously had few serious competitors. While Sony Ericsson, Nokia, and Motorola were present, BlackBerry stood out as the high-end mobile phone brand. Everything changed almost overnight. With a larger screen, more dynamic capacitive touch, multimedia playback, and an improved camera, the iPhone outperformed the BlackBerry in several areas. Still, the browser was what set the two apart. BlackBerry had a much smaller screen for rendering photos, which limited how the layout could be displayed. The iPhone completely outperformed its rival with a screen that is almost twice as large, offering more options for interacting with the website. Furthermore, the majority of interactions with the gadget felt more organic overall. However, BlackBerry would not give up easily. BlackBerry was still performing quite well, despite what the public believed at the time. They were spreading over the world, including Indonesia and India. Being such a large firm, they even needed to construct new factories to meet demand. After the iPhone's initial network issue was resolved, BlackBerry responded. The next phone would have a slide-down tab and include a considerably larger screen, all the while honoring the Qwerty keyboard that made them famous. The fundamental issue with BlackBerry was that it was attempting to compete in a dynamic industry by upgrading its physical features while keeping its operating system essentially static. BlackBerry quickly became aware of this and changed its Java-based operating system with a new one created in the QNX programming language. Unfortunately, QNX was not well liked by developers. Instead, they decided to create apps for Apple and Android so they could reach a far wider audience. For BlackBerry, it was ultimately a damaging feedback loop. As a result of fewer third-party apps, fewer consumers were interested in purchasing BlackBerry devices, which in turn meant that app developers had fewer customers to sell to. This vicious cycle continued as fewer developers created fewer apps for BlackBerry. Within a year, BlackBerry has fallen from first to third place as the most popular mobile brand. In another attempt to salvage BlackBerry, they updated the operating system yet again, but this time they jumped ship with their competitors and used the Android OS. Regretfully, this move showed that BlackBerry had lost its uniqueness in comparison to other Android phones and had no advantage in this rapidly expanding market. Naturally, they shifted their path and became a software company. Currently, the company focuses mostly on security and enterprise software. They still produce phones, but their share in the worldwide market is basically zero at 0.05%. Undoubtedly, BlackBerry was killed by Android and the iPhone, but BlackBerry let them do so. Because they were at the top, complacency grew. BlackBerry models failed to create any significant advancements or interesting new features that would convince you to replace your current device. They just continued making the same phone model repeatedly. While there were occasional new and better features and little improvements to the cameras, they did not represent the significant advancements observed in Apple and Android devices at the time. BlackBerry sat on its hands, became complacent, and then woke up to play catch-up with the competition once it overtook them. Furthermore, the executives lacked a clear vision. Rather than truly listening to customers, they forced the company to conform to their perceptions of what they wanted. In 2010, Jim Balsillie, a former co-CEO of BlackBerry, was quoted as saying, "There may be 300,000 apps for the iPhone, but the only app you need is your browser." This may be the best way to capture the company's obstinate culture and lack of vision, which would ultimately cause it to fail. The company's leadership was ineffective in a number of ways. Firstly, they failed to recognize that non-business customers would eventually drive the industry. Second, they didn't do well in the emerging app economy. which explained why the iPhone and Android smartphones were so well liked. Finally, they failed to anticipate the development of mobile devices from basic communication tools to fully functional mobile entertainment systems. Despite the emerging touchscreen devices, the executives continued to use a Qwerty keyboard, which is another example of their inability to predict the direction the market was heading. By no means was this the easiest thing to see, but when the original Android developers saw the iPhone, they knew right away that touch was the way of the future, and changed their designs to get rid of their keyboards. This is something that BlackBerry could have done. We must give Jim and Mike credit for the way they handled that business, though. There was enough gas in the tank to keep the company going. By that, it means Jim Balsillie and his financing had no debt. The company had over $5 billion in cash when it encountered difficulties in 2000. But Mike Lazaridis still had a library of inventions. It was financed cautiously. They were able to purchase time to solve their issues. The story of BlackBerry serves as another example of how quickly the technology industry may change. BlackBerry gained success by offering a fantastic product, but they ceased coming up with new ideas at some point. They were complacent and unaware of the future until it was too late when the iPhone was released. They weren't even convinced about the concept of applications in 2010. In the end, BlackBerry was a business that achieved success, but struggled to maintain it. They lacked the motivation to continuously produce better products. The intense rivalry between Apple and Google Android throughout the years has continued to advance mobile phone technology. BlackBerry just never felt this strain until it was too late, because in the tech industry, when you start playing catch-up, you're already behind. Even if BlackBerry is still in the phone business, they could have become the Apple of today had they responded to the iPhone sooner. Though it was certainly possible, it would not have been simple. Consequently, the business was unable to maintain its market share. And there you have it, the story of the spectacular rise and fall of BlackBerry. They failed to innovate, got complacent at the top, and were ultimately unable to compete when sleek new touchscreen smartphones entered the market. It just goes to show how quickly fortunes can change in the fast-paced world of technology. One day you can be a market leader, the next you're struggling to stay relevant. BlackBerry serves as a cautionary tale for companies operating in highly dynamic industries. Continuous innovation is an absolute must to stay ahead of ever-evolving consumer demands and competition. We hope you enjoyed this business story and the lessons it provides. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe to Brandcast for more content like this. Let me know in the comments what other business stories you'd be interested in hearing about. Thanks for watching.